Jace Varen was tired. His once promising career as a cargo pilot had crumbled after a failed business venture left him buried in debt. With nowhere else to turn, he found himself wandering the backwater spaceports of the galaxy's outer rim, searching for anything to salvage what little remained of his life. He had lost everything: his ship, his savings, his dreams. But today, luck might be on his side. He arrived at a dusty, run-down scrapyard, the kind of place where old freighters and decommissioned warships went to die. The air smelled like rust, oil, and stale ozone, and the only sound was the hum of distant engines being stripped for parts. It wasn't much, but it was all he had left to work with. Jace wandered between rows of discarded ships, kicking at the gravel beneath his boots as he searched for something that might be worth a second chance. A rusted-out freighter caught his eye, a vessel so beaten up it looked like it had been abandoned for centuries. Its hull was scarred with the marks of countless battles, its engine compartment open and exposed, like a giant mechanical skeleton. The price tag on the ship's data display was laughable, a fraction of what it should have been worth. Jace eyed the seller, a grubby, one-eyed man who was leaning against a nearby container, puffing on a thick cigar. The man's grin was wide, revealing several missing teeth. "Take it or leave it," the seller said, his voice gravelly. "It's a bargain." Jace didn't need to be told twice. He was broke, desperate, and couldn't afford to be picky. The ship might have been falling apart, but it was still a ship. A ship meant freedom, and Jace craved that more than anything. After a quick exchange of credits, the deal was done. The seller walked off without a word, and Jace was left standing in front of the decrepit vessel, holding the keys to what he hoped would be his ticket back to some semblance of a future. With a sigh, he boarded the rust bucket, hoping it would get him off this forgotten world. He powered up the old engines, expecting a rough start, but instead the ship hummed to life, its systems slowly coming online. The display in front of him flickered, showing a basic ship interface, but as the lights flickered and systems booted, something strange happened. A series of encrypted logs appeared, garbled, and in a language he didn't recognize. Jace frowned. He wasn't the most tech-savvy, but he knew enough to sense that something was off. This ship, which should have been a simple freighter, seemed to have a past, and it wasn't a pleasant one. The logs continued to flicker, almost as if trying to warn him. He tried to access the data, but before he could do anything, the ship's AI responded with a strange, automated message. Companion contract. Active. His brow furrowed. What did that mean? Companion contract. He shrugged, deciding it was probably just some old system glitch. He wasn't in the mood to troubleshoot it right now. He'd been scammed before, but this was the best he could get, and it was still better than nothing. He was about to switch off the system when a sudden mechanical whirring sound filled the ship. A hidden compartment opened with a hiss, revealing a chamber inside, one Jace hadn't noticed before. He hesitated for a moment, wondering what he had gotten himself into. But curiosity got the best of him. He moved closer, cautiously inspecting the compartment. Inside there was a cryopod, still glowing with faint life. A feeling of unease settled over him, but it wasn't enough to stop him from stepping forward. The pod hissed as it powered up, and the chamber's door opened with a soft thud. Jace was taken aback by the sight that greeted him. Inside the pod was a woman. No, not a woman. Something else. Her skin shimmered with an iridescent glow, and her long silver hair seemed to flow like liquid. She was tall, her features elegant yet otherworldly. Her chest rose and fell with shallow breaths, and the air around her seemed to hum with energy. Jace froze. What in the hell was going on? The last thing he expected to find in this old ship was an alien woman in cryostasis. The ship's systems flashed again, and he saw the words cryostasis chamber, biological entity detected. Jace took a step back. He knew this wasn't a typical cargo ship, but just how far had he fallen? As if sensing his presence, the woman's eyes fluttered open, glowing faintly in the dim light of the ship. She blinked, slowly adjusting to her surroundings. Then, in a voice that sounded like it came from another world, she spoke. "I am Elari. I am yours." Jace's heart skipped a beat. He rubbed his eyes, wondering if this was some sort of hallucination. But the woman remained there, looking at him with calm, silver eyes. This was no dream. Jace stood frozen, staring at the woman in the cryopod. His heart raced, his mind struggling to comprehend what he was seeing. She was beautiful, unlike anyone he'd ever encountered, but the reality of the situation felt like a waking nightmare. This wasn't what he had bargained for. He had come to buy a ship, a broken-down freighter, sure, but never had he imagined a living, breathing alien would be part of the deal. The woman blinked again, her eyes flickering with a strange, almost unnatural light. She slowly sat up, her long, silver hair falling in waves around her shoulders. Jace's mind screamed at him to run, to get out of the ship and forget the whole thing. But his feet wouldn't move. There was something about her, something compelling that kept him rooted in place. "I am Elari," she said, her voice soft but clear. It carried an ethereal quality that seemed to resonate deep in his chest. "I am yours." Jace's pulse quickened as his mind scrambled for an explanation. Yours. What the hell did that mean? He blinked, trying to process the words. Was this some kind of misunderstanding? A malfunction in the ship's systems? He glanced at the glowing display above the pod, which read Companion Contract. Active. Jace frowned. What kind of contract was this? Was this some sort of ancient space-age marriage scam? He opened his mouth to protest, but Elari was already climbing out of the pod with a fluid grace that made her seem almost otherworldly. She stood tall, her movements deliberate and calm, as though she had been awake and active for hours, not just emerging from cryo-sleep. "Do not be afraid," she said, her words slow but steady as she extended a hand to him. "I am not here to harm you. I have been in stasis for centuries. It is time for me to fulfill my purpose." Jace took a step back, still trying to make sense of the situation. He rubbed his temples, hoping this was just some kind of messed-up dream. He hadn't signed up for any of this. He hadn't asked for an alien companion, least of all one who seemed to think they had some sort of contract. You're not real, right?" he muttered, his voice more uncertain than he'd intended. Elari tilted her head slightly, her silver eyes narrowing in what seemed like genuine confusion. "I am as real as you are," she replied calmly. "I have been entrusted to you. This vessel, this starship, was meant for us." Jace backed away a few more steps, shaking his head. "I think you've got the wrong guy. I didn't buy some kind of marriage contract or whatever this is. I just wanted a ship." Elari's gaze softened. "The ship is yours, yes. And so am I." She took a step forward, her movement fluid as she adjusted her posture, still carrying the weight of someone who was clearly accustomed to command. There was no hesitation in her steps, no fear, only a quiet confidence that unnerved Jace even more. Jace glanced at the ship's dashboard, half expecting some kind of malfunctioning system to flash another cryptic message. Instead, the words "Companion Contract," binding 100% transfer complete, flashed up in red letters. He groaned and ran a hand through his hair. How had he gotten himself into this mess? "I'm not sure what's going on," Jace muttered. "But I don't think this is whatever you think it is. You're not my wife or something. You're just stuck here, right?" Elari looked at him with a quiet, knowing gaze. She seemed patient, like someone who had lived far longer than she appeared. "It is not a choice, but a duty," she replied softly. "My people, we were once a part of a great civilization, bound by contracts such as this. The ship, it is my home, but it is also yours now. I am your companion, as it was always meant to be." Jace felt a sudden wave of confusion and frustration. This wasn't just some simple deal. It was a legacy, one that spanned across galaxies, something that he didn't understand and hadn't signed up for. Yet here he was, facing a woman who seemed to believe in something far beyond his understanding. "Listen, I didn't ask for any of this," Jace said, his voice rising slightly. I don't even know what to call this. I didn't sign any contract for." "Do not be afraid," Alari interrupted, her tone now gentle but firm. "I am not here to force anything upon you. I serve the ship as you do now. We are both bound by fate, but our path is not set by contracts alone. Together, we can choose what we will become. We can choose our future." Her words hung in the air for a moment. Jace didn't know whether to be relieved or even more terrified. He had always been a man of action. He didn't believe in fate or destiny or any of that cosmic nonsense. But standing here in front of this alien woman, in a ship that now seemed to hold more secrets than he could fathom, something deep inside him told him this wasn't just a random encounter. This was the beginning of something far bigger than he could imagine. Jace ran a hand over his face, still trying to make sense of the situation. The whole thing felt like some twisted dream he was too afraid to wake up from. He had expected a straightforward deal, a ship, a second chance. Instead, he'd ended up with an alien woman who seemed convinced they were bound by some ancient contract. Nothing in his training had prepared him for this. "So, what exactly am I supposed to do with you?" he asked, trying to sound less panicked than he felt. "I didn't buy a wife. I bought a ship. You're supposed to be some companion." "What does that even mean?" Alari's gaze softened, but there was no sign of distress in her demeanor. She stood calmly before him, her posture dignified, like someone who had long since accepted their role in life. "It means I will assist you, guide you, and fulfill my purpose. In exchange, you will take care of the ship and me. Together, we will restore what has been lost." Jace blinked, unable to suppress the laugh that bubbled up from his throat, though it sounded more like nervous laughter than amusement. "Assist me? What are you? A mechanic? A housekeeper?" He shook his head in disbelief. "I don't need." "You do," Alari interrupted, her voice gentle but firm. "You will soon realize that." Jace stopped mid-sentence, feeling a chill wash over him. Her words weren't just calm, they were assured, as if she already knew the course his life would take. He didn't know why, but the thought unsettled him more than he cared to admit. Still, he wasn't ready to just roll over and accept this bizarre situation. He turned to the console in front of him, half-heartedly scanning the ship's systems to avoid looking at Alari. "All right, fine. But I'm telling you now, this ship is a mess. I don't know how much I can fix. I'm no engineer. I didn't sign up for a floating palace, or whatever this is." Alari stepped forward and placed a hand on the console. To Jace's surprise, the ship's systems hummed in response, glowing with a soft blue light. "I will assist," she said again, this time with an almost imperceptible smile. "Together, we will bring the ship back to its full potential." Jace raised an eyebrow. Was she serious? He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this ship than he'd been told, more than he'd bargained for. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized something. Alari was right. He didn't know how to fix this ship on his own, and he wasn't about to let it fall apart on him. "All right, so what do we do first?" Jace asked, trying to sound more confident than he felt. Alari's smile deepened, and for the first time, Jace noticed a glimmer of something like warmth in her eyes. "First, we repair the engines," she said, her voice calm yet commanding. "Then, we will uncover the ship's true potential." Jace looked at her, unsure whether he was ready for whatever she was implying. But as he stared back at her calm, unflinching expression, something inside him shifted. Maybe this was a second chance, one that came with more baggage than he could have imagined. But maybe, just maybe, it was worth the risk. "Engines, huh?" he muttered, his mind already turning. "I guess we better get to work, then." Alari nodded, turning toward the ship's engine compartment. "I have already begun the initial diagnostics. There are ancient systems at work here, ones that required delicate handling. But together, we will restore them. Jace followed her, his feet heavy with the weight of the situation. This wasn't just about fixing the ship. He realized with a sinking feeling that Alari wasn't just a passenger. She was a key to something much bigger than either of them could have imagined. Something hidden beneath the surface of this ancient vessel. As they entered the engine room, the walls hummed with an eerie energy, the dim lights flickering in time with the ship's pulse. Jace couldn't help but notice how Alari seemed at home here, like she belonged in this space, as though she were an extension of the ship itself. She moved around the machinery with ease, her silver hair flowing behind her, as she connected wires and adjusted levers that Jace wouldn't even know how to touch. "This is an ancient ship," Alari said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It is not like anything you've ever encountered. But you will learn. You must." Jace stared at the walls, half dazed by the complexity of the ship's systems. "I didn't ask for any of this," he muttered under his breath. "I just wanted a simple freighter." Alari turned toward him, her silver eyes locking onto his with an intensity that made his stomach twist. "It is never simple when the stars are involved. You will learn that soon enough, Jace." Her words struck a chord deep inside him. He wasn't sure if he was ready for whatever this was, but there was no turning back now. Whatever this ship was, whatever Alari was, it was going to change his life in ways he couldn't even begin to fathom. Jace hadn't even realized how much time had passed. The engine room, once a dark and foreboding space, now hummed with life. Alari had been working tirelessly, adjusting the ancient systems, and Jace found himself surprisingly absorbed by her methods. It wasn't just technical expertise. There was something intuitive about the way she moved around the ship, like she was tapping into some deeper knowledge. But the peace didn't last long. The ship's AI buzzed with urgency, drawing Jace's attention back to the control panel. "Alert. Hostile vessel detected. Pirate ship approaching at 12 o'clock. Jace's heart skipped a beat. Pirates. It had been years since he'd dealt with anyone like that. Usually, ships in these parts stayed off the radar of major threats, but it seemed that luck wasn't on his side today. "Pirates," Jace muttered, glancing at Alari, who was already standing near the cockpit, her silver eyes focused, her posture straight. She wasn't reacting the way he expected. "Aren't we supposed to hide or run?" Alari didn't answer immediately. She simply began typing in commands, pulling up a holographic map of the surrounding sector. The pirate ship was closing in fast, and it was big, bigger than anything Jace would have expected to find in this desolate part of the galaxy. It had the look of an old military vessel, heavily armed and bristling with weaponry. "You're not going to outrun them," Alari said, her voice calm but firm. "We need to stand our ground." Jace blinked. "Stand our ground? Are you insane? We're talking about a pirate ship, and we've got a barely functional freighter." Alari turned toward him, her silver eyes glowing in the dim cockpit light. There was a quiet intensity to her gaze, one that sent a chill down Jace's spine. "You don't understand. This ship is more than you think. It's not just for cargo and transport." Before Jace could ask what she meant, Alari moved with a sudden grace, pulling open a hidden compartment near the bulkhead. Inside, there was a sleek, glowing weapon, its blade pulsing with energy. The sight of it made Jace's stomach tighten. "What the hell is that?" he asked, his voice a mix of awe and fear. "This," Alari said, her tone almost reverent, "is a plasma blade. An ancient weapon. It is a relic of my people." Jace took a step back. "You're telling me you're planning to fight pirates with that thing?" Alari's lips curled into a faint, knowing smile. "We don't have much choice, do we?" The tension in the cockpit grew thick as the pirate ship drew closer. Jace could hear the faint hum of its weapon systems coming online. The ship's AI began calculating potential evasive maneuvers, but Jace could already see the writing on the wall. They weren't going to outrun these pirates, not with their outdated, barely functional engines. "We need to prepare," Alari said, her voice steady. "Get to the armory. Now." Jace hesitated, but something in Alari's tone made him obey. There was a calm determination about her, and for some reason, it gave him a sense of security, though he couldn't understand why. He didn't have time to think about it. If they were going to survive this, he needed to trust her. He sprinted toward the ship's lower levels, reaching the armory just as Alari followed behind. She handed him a small, sleek blaster, its design unfamiliar but clearly meant for precision. It felt cold and heavy in his hands. "You'll need this," she said. "It's not much, but it'll do." Jace nodded, the weight of the weapon strangely comforting. He didn't know how to use it, but instinct told him that this was no time to hesitate. Alari was already moving, her plasma blade in hand, as she deftly worked to secure the ship's systems and prepare for battle. The comms buzzed with a gruff voice, distorted by static. "This is Captain Raylak of the Black Fang. You're about to become our newest prize, unless you want to lose that ship of yours. Surrender now." Jace exchanged a look with Alari, his heart pounding in his chest. He wasn't ready for this. He had no idea how to fight pirates, let alone survive a direct confrontation with a ship like the Black Fang. But Alari wasn't afraid. In fact, she seemed more at home than ever. "We're not surrendering," she said quietly, her voice filled with a calm resolve. "This ship is more than just a vessel. It's a key, and if they want it, they'll have to fight for it." Jace swallowed hard. There was no turning back now. He didn't know what Alari meant by key, but as the sound of weapons charging grew louder and the Black Fang loomed just outside their hull, one thing became clear. The ship he had thought was just a rusted-out freighter was much, much more than he had bargained for. And so was Alari. The ship trembled as the Black Fang's weapons powered up, the vibrations running through the walls like an electric pulse. Jace's heart raced, his grip tightening around the blaster Alari had handed him. He wasn't a fighter. He was a cargo pilot, a man who'd spent most of his life hauling goods across quiet sectors, avoiding trouble. But there was no avoiding it now. "Are you ready?" Alari asked, her voice calm, almost detached as she checked the ship's shields one last time. "I'm not sure I'm ever going to be ready for this," Jace muttered, barely able to keep his hands from shaking. The sound of enemy ship engines rumbling closer didn't help. Alari's eyes narrowed as she assessed the situation, already plotting their next moves. Her composure in the face of certain danger was unnerving and strangely reassuring. "I will handle the Black Fang's borders. You focus on the ship's defense. They'll try to disable our engines first." Jace's stomach tightened. He had no idea what Alari had in mind, but if he was going to make it out of this alive, he needed to listen to her. "Right. Got it," he said, his voice shaky but determined. The comms buzzed again, this time with a sharper tone. "We're coming aboard, whether you like it or not. Prepare for boarding. You've got one chance to surrender." Jace didn't respond. Instead, he ran to the nearest control panel, his hands working automatically to engage the ship's defensive measures. He fired up the basic turrets, but he knew they weren't much, nothing compared to the firepower of the Black Fang. Alari's words rang in his mind. "It's not just a freighter." The first blast from the enemy ship hit their shields, rattling the walls of the bridge. The alarms blared, but Jace didn't flinch. He had been through worse, or so he told himself. "You'll need to trust me," Alari said again, her voice cutting through the noise like a knife. She had already vanished from the cockpit, likely heading toward the ship's boarding hatch. Jace watched as she disappeared down the corridor. He had no idea what kind of backup she had planned, but he could only hope it was enough. Meanwhile, the pirate ship was getting closer. The next few seconds felt like an eternity. Another blast from the Black Fang struck, this time directly hitting the starboard side. The ship shuddered violently. Systems blinked on and off, and the lights flickered. Jace's hands flew over the control panel as he activated the shields at full power, hoping it would hold long enough. The Black Fang's engines roared as it finally pulled alongside them. The magnetic locks on the pirate ship's boarding ramp engaged with a resounding thud. The ship's AI blinked on the screen, showing a red alert. Boarders detected. Immediate action required. Jace's stomach churned. He didn't know what was coming next, but he could hear the unmistakable sound of boots clanking against the metal floors of the Black Fang's boarding ramp. Please don't be too late, he thought, gripping his blaster tightly as he slowly made his way to the hatch. Then a crackling sound came through the comms. Boarders inbound. Prepare yourself. Jace's hand tightened around the blaster. He wasn't a fighter, but he wasn't going to let these pirates take his ship. His hand moved to the hatch control. He was about to open it when suddenly the ship's AI chimed in with a strange, almost frantic tone. Warning, the Black Fang's systems are compromised. Internal sabotage detected. What? Jace muttered, confused. The AI was glitching, its voice warped. But before he could understand what was happening, the door to the engine room burst open. Alari stood in the doorway, a gleaming plasma blade in her hand. She was a vision of calm amid the chaos. Without a word, she stepped into the fray. The pirates who had boarded were clearly not prepared for her. The first one, a burly man with a scar over his left eye, raised a blaster to fire. But before he could get a shot off, Alari moved in a blur, her plasma blade flashing with deadly precision. She disarmed him in a split second, the weapon falling to the floor with a metallic clatter. Jace could barely believe his eyes. She wasn't just fighting, she was dancing, as if she were one with the ship and the weapons. Her movements were fluid, instinctive. The pirates were no match for her. The other two pirates hesitated, clearly unsure of what to do. The one on the left fired his blaster, but Alari sidestepped with a fluid motion, catching the incoming shot with her blade. The blast ricocheted, missing its target by inches. She was impossibly fast. Without a word, Alari advanced, her blade cutting through the air with surgical precision. She moved like a force of nature, each strike calculated and perfect. The pirates didn't stand a chance. One by one, they fell, disarmed or incapacitated. Jace stood frozen, watching as Alari moved with deadly efficiency. For a moment, he thought he saw a flicker of something not quite human, in the way she fought, in the way she moved through the chaos. But before he could dwell on it, the last pirate fell to the floor, unconscious. Alari stood over the bodies, breathing slightly heavier but unscathed. She wiped the blade clean, her eyes meeting Jace's for the first time since the fight had begun. "It's over," she said quietly. "We're safe." Jace felt his heart still racing in his chest. He hadn't expected this. He hadn't expected her. The silence in the aftermath of the battle was almost deafening. Jace stood there, frozen in the cockpit, his blaster still clutched in his hands. The last few minutes felt like they'd happened in a blur. Pirates boarding, the battle, and then Alari cutting through them like a storm. He had never seen anything like it. He had never thought a woman, an alien, could be so lethal. Alari's movements were almost serene as she walked past the fallen pirates, her plasma blade still humming softly in her grip. She didn't look at Jace, though there was a faint smile tugging at the corners of her lips as if she were satisfied by the outcome. To her, it seemed like just another part of her duty. "You were incredible," Jace finally managed to say, his voice still shaky. "You just..." Alari turned to him, her eyes unwavering and calm. "I did what needed to be done. This ship and its future depend on our survival. Nothing more." Jace nodded, still struggling to process what had just happened. He had barely managed to pull the trigger, and here was Alari, effortlessly dismantling a group of armed pirates without breaking a sweat. It was clear now, she wasn't just some stasis-bound companion. She was something more. "Who are you, really?" Jace asked, the question weighing heavily on his mind. "I know you're not just some alien, bride, or whatever. There's something else going on here, something you're not telling me." Alari paused, her gaze softening, though her expression remained unreadable. She seemed to consider his words carefully before she spoke. "I told you that I am yours, as per the contract. But that is not the whole truth. I am part of something much larger. This ship is not just a vessel. It is the key to an ancient legacy, one that could change the course of history. It was built by my people, a civilization that existed long before yours." Jace's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean, key? What kind of legacy?" Alari walked over to the ship's main console, her fingers dancing over the controls as she activated the system. The screens flickered, revealing a series of encrypted files, each one more complicated than the last. She glanced over at Jace, her eyes serious. This ship was not meant for transport or trade. It was designed to house the most important technology ever created, something that could bring peace or destruction, depending on who controls it. The Black Fang. They were after it. But so are others. You were not supposed to be involved, but now that you are, there is no turning back. Jace blinked, his mind spinning with the implications of what she was saying. A ship built for peace or destruction. He'd thought it was just a broken-down freighter. This was something else entirely. "So, what does that mean for me?" he asked, trying to make sense of the new reality he was being pulled into. "What do I have to do with any of this? I just wanted a simple ship. I didn't sign up for ancient secrets and galactic legacies." Alari's gaze softened for a moment, and her tone became almost sympathetic. "You are the key now, Jace. You are bound to the ship just as much as it is bound to you. The ship's AI recognizes you as the new captain, the new protector of the legacy. I am here to guide you, to help you unlock its full potential, but it is your choices that will shape its future." Jace felt a chill run down his spine, a protector of an ancient legacy. He couldn't even wrap his head around what that meant. He wasn't qualified for any of this. He was a pilot, not a hero. Not someone who was supposed to change the course of history. But Alari's gaze, steady and unwavering, told him something else. She believed in him. She trusted him. And in that moment, Jace realized that she might be the only one who did. He wasn't just a bystander in this story anymore. He was a participant, a reluctant one, maybe, but a participant nonetheless. "I don't know if I can do this," Jace muttered, more to himself than to her. "I'm just a guy who wants to be left alone with his ship. But if what you're saying is true, then I don't have much of a choice, do I?" Alari stepped closer, her voice quiet but firm. "You do have a choice. Everyone does. But some choices have greater consequences than others. You've already made your first choice, Jace. You chose to fight. You chose to survive. And now you will learn what it means to protect this ship, and the secrets it holds." Jace nodded slowly, his resolve hardening. He wasn't sure if he was ready, but he knew one thing. He couldn't turn back now. The ship had chosen him, and Alari had chosen to stand by him. Whatever this legacy was, whatever this ship was, he was in it for the long haul. "All right," he said, finally meeting her gaze. "What do we do next?" Alari gave him a small, approving nod. "First, we repair the damage. Then we prepare for what comes next. The Black Fang wasn't the only ship hunting us, Jace. There will be more. But together, we'll be ready." As Jace turned to begin repairs, his mind raced with the possibilities. The ship was ancient, a relic of a long-lost civilization. And yet, it had chosen him. What had he gotten himself into? But there was no turning back. Not anymore. The hours that followed were a blur of repairs and planning. Jace and Alari worked in tandem, her hands moving with a precision that seemed otherworldly, while his clumsy attempts at mending the ship's damaged systems were less than graceful. Yet despite his lack of experience, he found himself learning quickly, guided by Alari's calm instructions. She was patient with him, never rushing, always precise. As they worked, Jace's mind kept returning to her words. The ship was more than just a transport vessel. It was the key to something ancient, something far bigger than either of them could have imagined. He had been chosen to protect it. But why? He was just a guy trying to make a living. Larry, he said as he tightened a panel back into place, trying to keep his hand steady. You said I was the key. What does that even mean? Why me? Larry paused from her task and turned to face him, her expression as calm as ever. You were chosen because of your bloodline. Jace, the ship recognizes you as its rightful captain. You may not understand yet, but you are tied to the legacy of the ship in a way no one else could be. Jace frowned, his brow furrowing. Bloodline. I'm just a freighter pilot from a backwater system. How does that make me special? Larry's eyes seemed to soften for a moment, and she walked over to him, stopping just a few feet away. Your ancestry, Jace. It's not about your station or where you come from. The ship's AI was designed to identify those with the right genetic markers that trace back to a long-forgotten lineage of starfarers who once ruled the galaxy. Jace's mind raced, and for a moment, he thought he might have heard her wrong. Starfarers. Wait, you're telling me that me, have some connection to a race of, what? Ancient space conquerors. Not conquerors, Larry said, shaking her head. Explorers. Visionaries. They saw the stars as something to be understood, not controlled. They believed in peace, in uniting the different species of the galaxy. But there were those who feared them. They were hunted, wiped out, their knowledge nearly lost to time. Almost lost. Jace echoed. So, what? I'm the last of these. Explorers. Larry nodded slowly, her expression somber. You carry the bloodline of the first pilots, those who built this ship. And that ship is not just a relic. It is a key to accessing their technology, their knowledge. It has been dormant for centuries, but now that you are here, it has begun to awaken. This ship and its systems are part of the legacy of those ancient starfarers, the pirates, the Black Fang. They'd been hunting for it because they know what it can unlock. And now, they know you're here. Jace felt a wave of disbelief wash over him. His head was spinning. The weight of the revelation hit him harder than any of the pirate attacks had. He had no idea how to process this. He was just a guy who'd bought a cheap ship to get by. And now he was supposed to be the last hope of a lost civilization. Look, I'm not sure what you expect me to do with all this, Jace said, frustration creeping into his voice. I'm not a hero. I'm not a leader. I'm just trying to keep this thing from falling apart. Larry's gaze never wavered. I understand your reluctance, Jace, but you must trust me. The choice was never yours alone. The ship has chosen you, and you have the potential to unlock its full power. You have the power to finish what the Starfarers started. Jace ran a hand through his hair, his mind still reeling. But what if I don't want any of this? What if I just want to leave, go back to the way things were? Larry's expression softened, but there was a hardness beneath her calm demeanor. You can run if you wish, but the galaxy will change, with or without you. And if you walk away, you'll leave the legacy in the hands of those who wish to control it for their own gain. The pirates will come again, and next time, they won't stop until they have what they want. Jace opened his mouth to argue, but the words stuck in his throat. Deep down, he knew she was right. There was no escaping it now. He was in this, whether he liked it or not. What happens if I don't unlock it? What if I can't? He asked quietly, his voice filled with doubt. Larry's gaze softened, but there was a determination in her voice. The legacy will remain dormant, its secrets buried forever, but the ship won't let that happen. It needs you. You will learn how to unlock its power, step by step. And together, we will stop those who seek to abuse it. Jace's thoughts swirled, but one thing was clear. There was no going back. He had a choice to make, one that would define not only his future but the fate of the galaxy. He exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of the decision press down on him. All right, he said, his voice steady now, though his heart was still racing. "Let's unlock it then. I guess we don't have much time." Alari nodded, her expression softening with approval. "Then let's begin." The air in the control room was thick with anticipation. Jace stood in front of the central console, his hands trembling as he stared at the glowing screen in front of him. Alari stood beside him, her presence calm and reassuring as she watched him, her eyes filled with an unreadable intensity. Jace had come a long way from the moment he'd first boarded the ship. He'd gone from a simple cargo pilot trying to make a quick buck to the reluctant keeper of an ancient legacy. The choice had been made for him, whether he wanted it or not. And now, here he was, about to unlock the final secret of the ship, whatever that meant. The ship's AI buzzed to life, its voice smooth and neutral. Initiating sequence. Legacy unlock in progress. Alari leaned in, her hand lightly brushing the controls. "You must be prepared, Jace. This is no longer about survival. This is about the future of the galaxy." Jace's breath caught in his throat. "I don't even know if I'm ready for this. How do I even begin?" "The key is your bloodline," Alari said softly. "It's encoded in you. The ship recognizes it. You've been chosen as its final captain." He closed his eyes for a moment, trying to block out the overwhelming sense of responsibility that surged through him. But when he opened them again, he met Alari's gaze with a resolve he hadn't known he was capable of. If this was his fate, then he would face it head-on. The console flickered, and a new set of coordinates appeared on the screen. Coordinates to a distant sector, far beyond the borders of the known galaxy. Alari's expression shifted, her eyes narrowing, as she studied the data. "This is it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The heart of the legacy. The location of the Starfarer's lost archives." Jace's mind raced. "Wait, this is where all the secrets are." Alari nodded, her expression grim. "Yes, but it's also where the ship's final power lies. Whoever controls the archives will hold the key to reshaping the galaxy, either for peace or for war. That's why the Black Fang came after you, why the pirates are hunting us." The gravity of the situation settled on Jace like a physical weight. He wasn't just protecting the ship anymore. He was protecting the future. The ship's legacy could change everything, depending on who got their hands on it. A warning flashed across the screen. "Hostile ships detected. Pirate fleet incoming." Jace's stomach dropped. He hadn't been expecting this, but in hindsight, he should have known. The pirates had been after them the entire time. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. "Alari, what do we do?" Jace asked, his voice a mix of fear and determination. "They're going to attack again." "We fight," Alari replied, her voice calm but unwavering. "We can't let them reach the archives. Not now." Jace nodded, his pulse quickening. He wasn't sure what to expect when they reached the coordinates. He wasn't even sure how they were going to get there. But there was no turning back now. The pirate fleet was coming, and this would be the final test. Alari moved to the cockpit and quickly began typing in commands, rerouting power to the engines. The ship's systems hummed with life as they shifted into high gear. Jace joined her, his hands moving instinctively to the weapons controls. "We'll need every advantage we can get," Alari said, her voice steady as she activated the ship's defensive shields. "They'll try to disable the ship before boarding. We must protect the archives at all costs." Jace felt his heart pounding as the pirate fleet loomed closer. The view on the screen shifted, showing the approaching ships, a dozen or more, each one bristling with weapons. They were closing in fast. "We'll fight our way through," Jace said, more to himself than to Alari. The weight of the responsibility pressed heavily on him, but he had come this far. He wasn't about to give up now. The ship's weapon systems powered up, and the sleek, once quiet freighter now hummed with the intensity of a battle-ready vessel. Alari turned to him, her eyes filled with quiet strength. She knew what was at stake, and she knew Jace would rise to the challenge. "I'm with you," she said simply. "Together, We will make sure the legacy survives." As the first blast from the pirate fleet struck their shields, Jace braced himself for what was to come. He wasn't ready for this fight, but he was going to face it anyway. This wasn't just about protecting the ship anymore. It was about protecting everything. The future, the legacy, the galaxy itself. With a determined breath, Jace slammed the throttle forward. The ship surged ahead, cutting through space at impossible speeds. They were heading toward the heart of the galaxy's greatest mystery, and they were going to get there, no matter what it took. The pirates would come for them. But Jace was ready. This time, he wasn't running. He was fighting for everything that mattered.